Welcome to the episode 45 summary of the Reading Finnegans Wake in 200 Sessions podcast, where we analyze Finnegans Wake by James Joyce, 3 pages at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us. Okay, so today we're cracking the code on one of the most famously difficult bits of Finnegans Wake. And that's saying something, right? We're talking about the fable of the Mookse and the grapes. Now, this story, it's super dense, really allegorical, but it's also a key to unlocking the whole book. So let's dive right in. So right off the bat, Joyce is kind of messing with us. He starts this whole thing with this super ironic tone. It's like he's setting it up as this simple little story told by a know-it-all lecturer to his, and I quote, muddlecrass pupils. You can just feel Joyce winking at the reader here, you know? He's pretending to make it easy for us right before he throws us headfirst into one of the wildest, densest allegories you can possibly imagine. All right, so let's get into what this fable is all about. At its core, it's a big, fat allegory. Joyce is taking one of the main conflicts of the whole book, this huge clash between two opposite forces, and he's boiling it down into this little tale about two symbolic creatures who meet by a river. So let's meet our two contestants, shall we? Okay, first up in the ring, we have the Mookse. Now, to get a handle on this guy, I want you to think about everything that's fixed, solid, and totally in charge. He is, for all intents and purposes, the absolute embodiment of space. And his name, Mookse, well, this is just classic choice. It's not just a name, it's a whole puzzle box. He's mashed together the mock turtle from Alice in Wonderland, a sneaky fox from Aesop's fables, and even the Danish word for to grumble. So what you get is this pompous, crafty, grumbling creature all rolled into one. It's brilliant. And if you look at what he represents, it all starts to click. He's all about space and stone, that idea of permanence. He's a stand-in for the Pope, and not just any Pope, but the English Pope Adrian IV, which brings in the power of both Rome and England. He's the right bank, you know, the establishment. He's even associated with deafness, which is really about a total unwillingness to listen to anyone else. Basically, he is pure, unbending, rigid authority. So here we see him setting off on his big journey. And just listen to the words Joyce uses: impermeable, impugnable, immobile. See the pattern? Everything about him is defensive, static, unmoving. He's stepping out of his fancy estate, which is basically a symbol for Britain and Rome, and he's heading out to judge the world, completely convinced of his own righteousness. Now, of course, you can't have a Mookse without his opposite number, so let's bring in the gripes. And if the Mookse is that solid, unchanging world of space, then the gripes is his complete and total opposite. He's all about the fluid, ever-changing, and kind of suffering force of time. And just like with the Mookse, his name tells you everything you need to know. The gripes is a mashup of the griffin from Alice in Wonderland, the whole sour grapes idea from Aesop's fables, and a gripe, like a sharp pain you feel inside. He is absolutely a figure of longing and suffering. It's this direct opposition that really defines these two characters. Think about it. The Mookse is stone. The Gripus is a tree. The Mookse is the Pope. The Gripus is the heretic Barbarossa. The Mookse is England. The Gripus is Ireland. One is deaf to the world. The other is blind, always looking inward. It's the individual artist squaring off against the established church. And when we first meet him, yeah, he is suffering. The text says he's parched and fit to be dried, just like a bunch of grapes withering on the vine. And get this, he's sitting in a tree right over this flowing river, the stream of life itself. He's so close to it, so connected, but he's just not getting the juice of his times. So when these two guys finally face off from opposite sides of the river, Joyce turns it into this massive debate. Seriously, he crams centuries of religious and political history into just this one little moment. The scene is, well, it's incredibly dense. For example, just look at what happens when the Mookse sits down on a stone. It's not just sitting. In that one action, Joyce summons a whole line of popes. De rure elbo was Pope Adrian IV's motto. Leo the faulty findeth is a pun on Pope Leo I, who was a big fault finder when it came to heresies. Joyce even throws in some imaginary popes and a reference to Sixtus. So a simple act, just sitting down, becomes this huge declaration of authority. It's wild. So you have this huge conflict, right? With all this history and symbolism packed into it. But it doesn't end in some big fight. No. Instead, the whole thing comes to a head over one simple but absolutely devastating question. The gripes, remember, he's the agent of time. He just looks across the stream and asks the Mookse, the Lord of Space, what is the time? Now, you've got to understand, this is way more than just asking for the time. It's a fundamental challenge to his very existence. It's like asking a rock what it feels like to fly. The gripes is forcing the Mookse to even think about a reality, fluid, passing time, that his entire rigid worldview is built to deny. And the Mookse, well, let's just say he does not handle it well. His first answer is just pure papal deflection. He says, "Ask my index," which is a direct reference to the Pope's infamous Index of Prohibited Books. See what he did there? He's not answering the question at all. He's just flexing his authority to ban certain knowledge. Then, his second response is another power play, wrapped up in a super complex pun. He says, "Mind my Achilles." This plays on Pope Pius XI, whose birth name was Achille Ratti, and the Latin word mundus, which means world. So he's basically saying, mind my worldly power, but at the same time, he's accidentally hinting at his own weakness, his Achilles heel. And his final dodge? It's just pure arrogance. Worship my Nazarene is a snotty way of saying worship the Nazarene, delivered with his nose stuck way up in the air. So he sidesteps the question 3 times with these displays of pompous, totally hollow authority. The simple truth is, he just can't answer. Okay. So after all that, what's the point? What's the big takeaway from this really bizarre story? Well, it's not just some random fable Joyce threw in. It's actually a blueprint for the entire book. This is where it all connects back to the main conflict in Finnegans Wake. The Mookse? He's a stand-in for Sean the Post, the brother who's a conformist, the mailman who just delivers the law. And the gripes? That's Shem the penman, the outcast artist brother who actually writes the law. This whole fable is their eternal battle in miniature. It's dogma versus heresy, authority versus the artist, space versus time. And really, that opposition is the story of Finnegans Wake. That constant tension between the Mookse and the grips, or Sean and Shem, that's the engine that drives the whole dreamlike logic of the book. It's what creates and destroys worlds over and over again in this endless loop. But here's the thing. In the end, Joyce never picks a winner. The fable doesn't really resolve, and neither does the book. Instead, he just leaves us with this massive question. If these two forces, the rigid Mookse and the fluid gripes, are locked in this forever struggle, what does that say about history, about progress, about truth itself? Joyce gives us no easy answers, just a world defined not by moving forward in a straight line, but by a never-ending cycle of conflict and creation. And that's what we're left to chew on.